Okay, we have a lot to talk about with, of course, Chris Watts, the name that never seems to go away, right? So Chris Watts has his next wife coming up. Can you believe it? Lizzie Lee Henderson is her name, and I've been researching the heck out of her. I've known her name for more than a year now, but I didn't really want to say her name. But now the Daily Mail has broken all this news wide open about Chris Watts wanting to marry this woman, so I thought, okay, it's time for me to just dig into her and publish what I know. Lizzie Lee Henderson filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy only 4 months before her first in-person visit with Chris Watts. So I couldn't help but think if that nugget has anything to do with her allegedly being so in love with Watts, maybe vice versa. Let's talk about it all. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Chris Watts' plans for marriage to Lizzie, Watts kissing his new would-be wife so passionately last year, these secret filings to change her last name to Watts and their application for marriage, Lizzie's family member who said to the Daily Mail, "Oh, ish." That was his reaction when he learned who Lizzie had actually been visiting in prison all these years. All of her visits to Chris Watts after moving her and her elderly mom all the way from here in Ohio up to Wisconsin. My goodness. We'll talk about her jobs, her potential motives, her diamond wedding rings. Boy, doesn't that remind you of some sad things related to the Watts case. Remember when Nicole Kessinger, his mistress, was like, "Pawn it, man. I don't know what to do with Shanann's ring." We'll talk about Lizzie's many in-person visits to Watts in prison. And lastly, just like Nicole Kessinger said, why? You know, I keep thinking, what would possess a woman to want to marry someone like Chris Watts, a notorious killer? Watts began kissing her, said a witness who saw Chris Watts kissing Lizzie Henderson during one of the many times that Lizzie has visited Watts over these past years. Lizzie wants to be Chris's wife so badly that she already goes by Lizzie Watts in the Getting Out prison app, where she can message her family or whomever, message, family members, because she has another family member, I believe, in jail. So yeah, it gets deep. But the Daily Mail has broken open this news of a potential prison wedding, as well as what this witness saw last year, this woman who she has come out and spoken about it before, but some people on Reddit didn't believe her, but now we know it's true. Watts and Lizzie had only 10 seconds to embrace at the end of their in-person visit. Now, where Chris is, Dodge Correctional Institute in Wisconsin, conjugal visits are not allowed. I did wonder that, and I saw conjugal visits were not allowed. I was researching it. Some prisons are wild. Like I was watching some show, and it was some prison, I don't remember where, but they literally allowed a spouse to come and spend the night in like this special room. Maybe I can find this prison. In a special room with their spouse, like overnight, or was it over the weekend? I was like, whoa, I'm sure a lot of inmates wish they had that. But no, not at Dodge Correctional. They just get 10 seconds at the end of their visit. And part of me is thinking, oh my goodness, has Lizzie romanticized this in her head, when they're sitting there visiting, and they're visiting for 3 hours and they can't touch each other for 3 hours and they get 10 seconds at the end of the visit. I guess that's like a thing of grace maybe the prison gives people. Imagine if it were a person going to see a family member, or a wife going to see her husband, and they have to sit there and they can't touch, but then finally 10 seconds left at the end of their visit, they get to have a hug. I've heard from different prison officials that, yes, inmates sometimes are just so hungry for a touch of a human being, especially if a person, they go off in solitary confinement. I've heard even when the CO or whomever might pass the meal to the inmate through that little tray, some of them might have that little hole or whatever. Even if it's, a guy and it's a big, burly CO or whatever, he will grab the man's hand just as a way of human connection. We probably don't see that, especially if, if we're around people more often, if we have a loving family, if we're always, hugging each other, we get a lot of love in our lives. We might not think about what it would be like to go for days and days and days without touching another human being. But apparently for Chris and Lizzie, this short coupling is worth it to them to work towards marriage, because, okay, Lizzie is this realtor with this realty company I won't name. It covers the Milwaukee southwestern region. It says she has 1 year of experience with real estate, but I couldn't find any bona fide home sales through my research, but I definitely found her bankruptcy and perhaps her desperate state when she started visiting Chris Watts. So Lizzie works in a grocery store, having moved her entire life, I guess, her elderly mother and herself from Cleveland, Ohio, that area, all the way to Wisconsin to be closer to Chris Watts, I guess, in preparation for their little prison marriage wedding thing. So indeed, it is a lot shorter drive from around New Berlin, Wisconsin or whatever to Dodge Correctional Institute. It's only a little over an hour drive. I'm not sure where Lizzie lives exactly, but I'm just giving you a general area. Compared to the 8-hour drive she used to make, driving all the way from Cleveland up to the prison in Wisconsin. Imagine making those 8-hour drives in the winter. Oh my goodness. I mean, Chris Watts talked about in his interview, how cold it was up there in Wisconsin, even coming from Colorado when he first moved there, when he first was transferred from Colorado prison to Wisconsin, and just the coldness. But I was imagining Lizzie driving from Cleveland, way up in Wisconsin. That's no joke. I've been to Wisconsin. It's some beautiful parts there, but yikes. 8 years after Chris Watts annihilated his entire family, he wants a new wife and a new marriage. Chris wants to get married, apparently. And no, Nicole Kessinger will not be his new wife, as much as she wanted to be his new wife back in 2018. Remember when Nicole spent hours searching for wedding dresses? She Googled stuff like, man I'm having an affair with says he'll leave his wife. She also searched for marrying your mistress, stuff like that. Nicole wasn't going to let a little thing like Chris's pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, she was 15 weeks pregnant, of course, at the time, and their 2 little beautiful girls, Bella and Cece, Celeste. Nikki wasn't going to let them stand in the way of her becoming Mrs. Nicole Watts. That's if she would have taken Watts' last name, like Lizzie apparently is doing. Now, back then, we know Nicole claimed she had no idea Shanann was pregnant, and she swore up and down Chris was, headed for divorce from Shanann. He lied to her. She didn't know anything. Instead, on August 13th, 2018, Chris killed his entire family. And ironically, the woman he brutally would kill his whole family to be with disappeared from view for years. Soon after Chris was arrested and ultimately, confessed, entered a guilty plea and everything in 2018. The case went viral. We really haven't seen Nicole since, except she would pop up at a funeral of her friend's mom years later. But other than that, Nicole has remained remarkably under the radar, with any dreams of, marrying Chris, I'm sure long buried and dashed. Now enter prospective Mrs. Chris Watts number 2. I'm surprised the Daily Mail didn't find Nicole Kessinger as much as they have. Their sharp skills of locating people. And it's not like Lizzie is the only woman who could have been Mrs. Chris Watts number 2, but she might be the closest woman to marrying Chris Watts. You might remember I made a video about Lizzie, even though I didn't name her. It was last year, July 15th, 2025. I made a video about this mysterious 38-year-old woman who was driving, all the way from Cleveland up to see Watts. I kept seeing her name 11 times on the visitors list at that point from the info I had. We're getting info delayed. It took authorities an entire year to fulfill my records request, so info can be a year delayed. Like I put in a public records request on July 9th, 2024 for Watts' records, and I received it on Friday, July 11th, 2025, almost a year later. So that was my 3rd records request over the past 4 years for Watts info. And today, I'll put a link into everything I'm going to discuss today, since I don't feel the need to hide Lizzie's name anymore. The toothpaste is already out of the tube. She's public now, so I'll put those unredacted files. They're still redacted. It's not like phone numbers and stuff, of people he's calling. But all the ones I have thus far, I'll put them up on Patreon, as well as the bankruptcy page paperwork, 52-page bankruptcy paperwork I just downloaded and went through. Helped me learn more about Lizzie, Chris Watts, maybe potentially his new wife. Oh my goodness. So today I put in even more public records requests for updated Watts info, including info about his marriage application and all this, permission he's requesting to marry Lizzie. So let's pray in Jesus we get those records well before, a year from now. I don't want to wait till August 2027 for confirmation. He might be married by then, who knows? Dodge Correctional Facility is in Wisconsin. That's where inmate Chris Watts, DOC 674796, is currently being held. So now let's talk quickly about the details I got from my public records request before we start moving all into Lizzie and her potential motivation, her bankruptcy, her visits, her kisses to Chris, her Bible studying, everything. So this is what I got from the DOC Office of Records Management in Wisconsin. It revealed basically from 2020 to 2022, or even before that, Chris had a few video visits. It was mostly with family, his mom, his dad, his sister. You'll see a family friend, a random woman here and there. A couple of contact visits with his families, mostly video visits, a couple of contact visits, a couple of women, but it wasn't much. By Friday, March 25th, 2022, Watts, he only had 8 approved visitors. So it's not like this long list of people were coming in. Again, just mom, dad, sister, family friend, one woman who, has been around since the Watts Island days, family friends. There's this 54-year-old former neighbor. We've heard his name in different interviews. There was that man's wife, another 57-year-old woman, and, the friends. But starting in 2023, Lizzie, this name appears, and that's why I made that video last year, because I was like, wait a minute, it wasn't just that she was some random woman showing up on Chris's visitor list. Sometimes it could just be a family friend, or maybe it's, who knows, Watts's mom saying, hey, can you visit my son? Or who knows, maybe it's someone he met through writing, or, writing letters, who knows, exchanging stuff. We can't get his letters and his phone calls and his video visits. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some of them. I keep trying to fight that and appeal that. But Lizzie shows up in 2023, and what caught my eye was, first of all, sometimes the age. She's 38. The frequency of her visits. So that's when I started looking into her last year, and I was like, she's this pretty African-American woman. The fact that I saw she was from Cleveland and, making a trek all the way up to Wisconsin, that's nothing to sneeze at. So I was like, something's going on here. Now, from my previous request last year, they provided me the most recent photo of Watts. I've requested another one, but as of now, this most recent photo of Watts was taken almost 3 years ago, October 27th, 2023. And he is smiling, if you notice. And I was thinking, okay, October 2023, is he smiling because Lizzie was added as an approved visitor on May 8th? 2023. So she went through the process, whatever that is, to get approved, to get in there. Was that why Chris was smiling? Perhaps. What I've also found out from my deep research is Lizzie had money troubles around this time. Money troubles that were escalating to the point of bankruptcy, garnishment of wages. I saw previously where she had been evicted years ago. I saw different traffic tickets, nothing real problematic. But then I saw the wage garnishment. And then I went on Pacer and purchased this Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing. I was like, whoa, total liabilities exceeded like $130,000. So it was March 21st, 2023, when Lizzie L. Henderson, and I've done my due diligence to match her up with, the Cleveland records and everything. She filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and I really know this is the same woman because interestingly, on March 30th, 2023, Lizzie began having her wages garnished only 4 months before she would pop up for her first in-person visit to visit Chris Watts. According to the Cleveland Municipal Court Case Summary, this case, I'll put it all down there, this GFS LLC, this basically, it's for financing your automobile. There was a default judgment rendered against her for over $7,000. So her wages were garnished. She had all this student debt as well. Lizzie does indeed list her marital status as not married. Unlike other women who I've seen kind of get involved with Chris Watts or be friends with him or, show up in his atmosphere, Lizzie is not married. And back then she wrote she does have a 68-year-old mother who temporarily lives with her. I think her mom continues to live with her, maybe now. It lists different employers, occupation as a manager, student, employed at one place for like 4 years as of March 2023, but it does list $98,000 in student loans owed to the U.S. Department of Education. She incurred that over the 10-year period between 2013 and 2023. That's a lot of debt. I mean, my goodness. I know a lot of people have a lot of student debt. However, the people who tend to have $100,000 in debt or so, sometimes you go on and look at their career and you're like, oh, you became an optometrist or you became this. And I see, and your salary is kind of commensurate with, okay, now I have the ability to start paying off the student loan. But I didn't really see her employment, her salary matching that high of student loans. So she owns this 2018 Chevy, or at least she did back then. It had 40,000 miles on it, but she was subject to her wages being garnished. So this is the condition. I like to do a timeline where I'm taking you into, okay, this is around the time Lizzie starts visiting Chris Watts. I'm not sure if she had contacted him previously, since he's been there or years earlier. I don't know how she contacted him. I don't know if she just, cold wrote him a letter one day and he responded and then eventually said, yeah, become my visitor. I don't know how that happened. As of June 6, 2025, Chris Watts had 7 people on his approved visitors list. Again, his parents, his sister, the female friend, the former neighbor, the neighbor's wife, and Lizzie. So as of this recording, today is Tuesday, August 11th, Lizzie has been seeing Watts for more than 3 years in person in prison. And previously, again, I didn't want to name Lizzie. I had uncovered her. I'd gotten the records, but I know people be cray. Like I like to say, people are crazy. I guess I felt protective over her in a way, like I have other women, Chris Watts, in his world. There was this one woman, I won't even mention her name, but she literally went on a TV show, who knows, 2019, whenever this was. And she was on one of those, random true crime hour specials. And she was kind of waxing romantic or whatever about Chris Watts. So people were kind of like, okay, who's this woman? What's her relationship to him? And she's just his friend or whatever. So of course people started digging into her and they learned she was married at the time. I don't know if she's still married. She was obviously calling Chris Watts a lot. I don't know if she went in and visited him much. I don't think I saw her name on the list. So maybe theirs was more of a, calling. She had a new baby and everything. Since she had already gone on TV and, outed herself, I remember reporting about her, making a video about her. Then she appeared in my Facebook Messenger, railing at me for, I guess, making a video about her. And she's, supposed to be a Christian too. And I didn't block her. We just kind of had our back and forth. And I was thinking to myself, lady, you're mad at yourself. Like, why are you going off on me for making a video about you? People get a little weird, sometimes when you make videos about them, and especially their alleged crimes. But not this woman, she was just talking to Chris on the phone. I don't know, I think she had her own issues, but that's why I try not to name people associated with Chris Watts. So I held it back, but now that Lizzie's name is out there, the Daily Mail has hunted her down and got her in all these great photos. We can talk about it. We can dig into these wedding plans. We can talk about her more deeply. We'll dig into her actual visits, her photos. At the end, we'll dig into the big question, why would a woman want to marry Chris Watts? So quickly, keeping up with this timeline, Lizzie began visiting Watts often in person for her contact visits, which, let's look at them now in depth before we delve into their makeout session and the marriage plans and everything. So, according to my research, Monday, July 24th, 2023, it was Lizzie's first in-person contact visit to Watts, and it lasted like 3 hours, from 3 p.m. to 6:02. I noticed she visits him a lot on Mondays. So, a couple of months later, Lizzie's back, September 25th, 2023. from 3:10 to 7:09. I was like, whoa, almost 4 hours. I don't know if I think they're limited. I just assumed they were limited to 3-hour visits, but I don't know. Maybe sometimes they get 4-hour visits. Then a few months later, Lizzie starts these back-to-back visits. And I was like, perhaps she was staying at a hotel in town, and that's why she would visit him multiple days back-to-back. Monday, November 20th, 2023, she's there at 3:32 p.m. to 6:33 p.m. with Watts. And then the very next day, Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, she's there from 2:54 p.m. to 5:55 p.m. Now, that next year, Lizzie does 3 days. So maybe she kind of waited. I mean, she's there around the holidays 2023. I mean, knowing her, she probably wanted to be there more. Who knows? But it takes money when you think about these trips. Everything always costs more than you expect. So if you're driving, first of all, from where? Cleveland to up to Dodge, wherever the hotels are up there, I couldn't even tell you. But, gas money, time, if you have to take time off work, I don't know, what her schedule was. And then if you have to pay for a hotel, your food, when you think about it, it gets pricey. But that very next year, Lizzie starts doing 3-day visits. So all the way March 25th, 2024. I wonder what was happening around that date. It's a Monday. I was trying to figure out, are these holidays or special days or anything? I couldn't see if she has any children at all. I couldn't find children on her bankruptcy form. No child support, no child care or children's education costs. Yeah, the only person she lists as a dependent, again, is her 68-year-old mother who lives with her. So she listed her mom as a dependent, but I don't see any children as dependents. So I'm assuming she doesn't have children, which kind of might make me even try and understand her rationale a little more. I'm not trying to skewer this woman or, tar and feather her. I like to take a unique perspective. But I was thinking, does she have kids? Because March 25th, that could be around spring break or something. But I don't know. She doesn't have children, it looks like. Monday, March 25th, she's there from 2:59 to 5:58 p.m., a good 3 hours. The very next day, Tuesday, 3/26, 2024. Yeah, March. She's there from 2:54 to 4:38 p.m. And I was like, that's less than 2 hours. Stuff happens. Did it go on lockdown? Did they get into an argument? Did she have to leave early? Sometimes stuff happens. You guys know, again, I go into my local jail, prison ministry every month. Sometimes stuff happens. Sometimes we have to wait. And one time we had too many team members come in there. I didn't even know the rules. I was laughing with the women we were rolling up in here too deep. They were laughing, but they were like, that's a good thing, they love it when people come to visit and talk to them and, attention. So one time we had too many people, one time we had to wait. Another time, it's stuff going on. Even the officers there didn't know what was going on. We had to leave early. I did the intro, and then my ministry leader started her spiel, I'll say. We were only there half an hour, and I heard overhead, I knew it. I was like, something's going on. You could hear they're going into lockdown. An announcement was made. The women were like, oh man, I think they started to gather their chairs, but I knew something was going on. And so we got out of there, and even the officers at the front and everything, they're so cool. They were like, what's happening? They didn't even know what was happening. So stuff happened. So I thought maybe, who knows what happened to cut that visit short. Wednesday, March 27th, the very next day, she was there from 3:03 p.m. to 5:59 p.m. Now she comes back for Watts's birthday. So this is intentional. You can tell she's catering to him or something. I'm like, well, she probably couldn't bring him any food. I'm sure the rules are so strict. You'll hear that too. In this YouTuber's interview I want to lead you over to, you will hear the strict rules of visiting. This isn't just like visiting a local jail. Some are stricter than others. This is you're going in, I don't think he's in a maximum security. I gotta see. I'll put it on the screen. It might be a medium security, but whatever. You're not going in with what is this? I have a comb. I have a comb in my hair or metal. I always try not to wear anything, underwire or anything, but you're not going in with some places with anything metal, no paper, stuff like that. So Lizzie comes back 2 months later for his birthday, Thursday, May 16th, 2024. Watts turns 39. May 16th, 2024, she's there from 3:25 to 6:23 p.m. Now, that very next month, she's back. I'm like, when did she exactly move there? She might not have moved there yet, but you can tell in 2024, the visits get more often. You know, she's right there back the next month. Did she drive? Maybe she drove on a Saturday. Can you imagine? If she's driving this long way, I just thought about that. Maybe she's moved by then because it's Saturday, June 8th, 2024. She's there at 10:17 a.m. And I'm like, if she drove all the way from Cleveland, she would have had to leave like at 2 a.m. unless she drove in on a Friday night, spent the night, paid for a hotel, and then got up and, saw him at 10:17 a.m. to 12:56 p.m. That's earlier than usual. Usually she was coming in around 3 p.m. Now, the next month, she does more back-to-back visits. She's doing Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. She's there from 3:27 p.m. to 6:26 p.m. Thursday, the very next day, July 25th, 2024, she's there from 3:27 again to 6:28 p.m. Now, that's where my records end for some reason. You get them at a certain point and then you're like, give me, and then by the time they provide it, it's like cut off or whatever. But anyway, I've linked to this YouTuber below. I was watching her yesterday. I'm subscribed over there. Please go subscribe. Deadline Crime. She has additional records. So please go watch her. Look for her link below. Subscribe. This is where her records pick up a little bit more and we can see the rest of 2024 and into 2025. Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, Lizzie was there visiting Watts from 2:51 to 5:50 p.m. Now, I noticed she wasn't there August 13th, the anniversary of the horrific crime in 2024. I don't know, in 2025, the record's cut off too. Now, the very next month, September 14th, 2024, Lizzie is visiting from 10:10 a.m. until 1:04 p.m. Now, Lizzie does another double day visit. So I'm like, maybe she's starting to live there now because it's like every month, almost every month thereafter, she's visiting him. Another back-to-back visit, Monday, October 7th, 2024, from 3:21 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Then the next day, Tuesday, October 8th, 2024, from 3:05 p.m. to 6:04 p.m. Like, that's a lot of visiting if you're thinking about driving a distance to visit someone. Saturday, November 2nd, 2024, from 10:15 a.m. to 1 p.m. Boy, that's a long time. She got almost another 4 hours. Right? Well, no, she got almost 3 hours there. Then the Saturday after Thanksgiving, November 30th, 2024, from 10:17 a.m. That's something so specific about that. I wonder what's up with that time. To 12:57 p.m. Then she's there on Christmas Day. Boy, what does that tell you about? I don't know. To me, that seems kind of like lonely. I get it if it were, your husband, your brother, your family member, or whatever. But she's like, I feel like Watts was a stranger to her. And she's there on Christmas Day, 2024, from 3 p.m. to 6:05 p.m. Now, let's briefly talk about these 2025 contact visits Lizzie had with Watts. Is this the year she moved to Wisconsin? Did she move there last year? And we'll find out when we dig into this Daily Mail article coming up, the kissing that went on in 2025. Okay, according to Deadline Crimes records, on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, Lizzie visited Watts from 2:58 p.m. to 5:56 p.m. And, thank you, Lord, for just pricking my memory because I feel like that's very close to Shanann's birthday. So I want to, hers might be the 10th. Yeah, her birthday was January 10th. And I was like, oh my goodness, did, Lizzie go visit him on Shanann's birthday? But no, she went the day before, which very well could have been intentional because according to some of these articles we've seen over the years, Chris allegedly would not have any visits on the anniversary of the murders, August 13th, as if he really truly had regrets, as if he would really truly cry over what he did. I don't know if that's true. But after that, she was there that same month, January 25th, 2025, from 10:08 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then she's back the following month, the Thursday before Valentine's Day, March 13th, 2025, from 3:11 to 6:12 p.m. Now, finally, the last three we have record of right now, March 1st, 2025, Lizzie's there at 10:25 a.m. to 1 p.m. So again, she's coming in early on a Saturday. Perhaps she really does live there by now. I don't know, maybe not. Seems like like she would be visiting him even more if she lived there. Then March 22nd, 2025, she's there at 10:39 a.m. on a Saturday till 1 p.m. And then finally, the last we have record of is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025 at 3:04 p.m. to 6:05 p.m. But that's not where the story ends, apparently. At least that's where the most recent available public records end. Like, I don't have all of those. Mine end at the portion where I told you. So that's what you'll see in the PDFs on my Patreon. But obviously there's more current records. I'm sure Lizzie's visits to him didn't end. Now, I told you again, the department denied my request for Chris's phone call audio recordings, saying that personal communications are not considered public records under the statutes of Wisconsin law. But, you know, it varies. You guys know we've heard tons of phone calls from different places. Prisons, maybe not so much. Jails, yeah, we'll see what happens. But let's get to the highlights of this Daily Mail article that broke the news wide open about Chris Watts, killer dad's Chris Watts' secret prison marriage to new wife Lizzie. Okay, they start out talking about Watts, how he's one of America's most notorious killers. He's serving multiple lifetimes in prison for the brutal murders of Shanann and the children. But 8 years after his horrific crimes, Chris Watts has embarked on a new, startling romance from behind bars. So it's talking about the Daily Mail exclusively revealing Watts. He's now 41 years old. He's in a relationship with this 39-year-old realtor who literally moved from Ohio to Wisconsin to be closer to his cell at Dodge Correctional. In Waupun. Technically, it's in Waupun, Wisconsin. So yeah, before, when I talked about her last year, and I was doing all the crazy AI renderings, and I was like, ooh, that might look a little bit too much like her, and I don't want some crazy to hunt her down and hurt her. You know, people can be so crazy. But now she's 39 apparently. And the Daily Mail, they really do the scoop, the due diligence. They talk to her relatives. Lizzie's relatives say she and Watts have applied to marry within the prison system, and she has already begun going by Lizzie Watts, at least on that app. She's already behaving like a married woman. So the photos that the Daily Mail took this week, they show her proudly wearing rings on her wedding finger, and it says while sealed court records show she has filed an application to legally change her name. I was like, Daily Mail, how did you find that? You know, if it's sealed court records, I was trying to search at least for the docket listing, not the actual, I don't know. You know how we kept trying to search for Nicole Kessinger's name change, and we couldn't find valid absolute proof like via a court document. But I'm like, how did they find that? Maybe just through her relatives. But Lizzie and Chris have been increasingly physical, it says. Prison visit logs showing Lizzie is a frequent visitor, we know that, at the maximum security prison. They call it max security. Now they're saying during one visit in August 2025, an eyewitness told the Daily Mail she watched them engage in a steamy makeout session just one day after the 7th anniversary of his gruesome killings. Oh, that would track, because if he doesn't normally have visitors on August 13th, it must have been Lizzie visiting August 14th, 2025. I should play you this woman's video. This is the woman they're talking about. She talks about visiting someone else there. The woman doesn't have to go back there because I guess her loved one, whomever, isn't in that prison anymore. But she was freaked out because she saw, oh, that's Watts. And yeah, he has a girlfriend, and she describes her as, you know, brown skin, short hair, really pretty woman, and how Chris was clutching a Bible or something, and then at last 10 seconds how they kissed.
Constitution in Waupun, Wisconsin. And last August, I was in that visiting room with him. I was not there visiting him, but I saw him there, and I about lost my mind. Having this information stored, knowing that I want to share it, I've just been really reserved about it. It's been bothering me. So here I am sharing it. I was there and I sat down. He was already in his visit, and I was looking at him and I'm like, that's Chris Watts. That's 100% Chris Watts. He was in the next row over from me, 2 chairs up. So all the inmates had to sit on one side of the table, visitors sit on the other side. So I was looking at him. And where he was seated, I had to walk past him to get to the vending machines and get to the microwave. And I knew it was him because I knew what he looked like. It was national news. I was very well aware that that was him, but just like confirmation of my own mind, when I walked past him, like literally right past him, I looked at his name tag, definitely said Christopher Watts on it. I was like, what is happening? So I didn't have any interaction with him, but I will say that he has a girlfriend. She was visiting him. She is light brown. She has very short curly hair, very beautiful woman. When I saw them, it was actually the day after the anniversary of his crime, and it was very eerie. I don't know how else to describe it. It was very eerie seeing him in person, being in the same room with him. They took a picture together. They took a picture right before I took a picture. It was very strange. They definitely had a very long kiss at the end of their visit. They were reading the Bible together. I don't know her. I never talked to her, but I'm never going to go back to that place again. It was just this one time that happened, and it's eerie. It's stuck with me for a little bit. It made me very uncomfortable. It was so strange. So also, I find it very odd that people like reach out to people that have these horrendous crimes because they saw them on the news and they think they can change them or whatever. But I will say that I am aware that his books are very well inflated. Like he has money while he's there. He has letters. He has people on his visiting list. There are definitely people coming to see him. I'm pretty sure this girl was his girlfriend. There are people there that, like, I talked to other visitors there, and there was some people that have been going there for years and years, and they've seen her come multiple times to come and see him. I'm just like, that is so strange. But I'll never experience it again. I thank God, because it was so strange to me. I hope that lady's okay. I hope she's okay. Because what?
So they go on and they talk about Watts, his murders and how he said he felt trapped in his marriage. He had an affair. But they talk about his need for female attention continuing behind bars, lots of pen pals, all these admirers. We've seen the letters that women wrote him after he got arrested. But it's saying Chris's relationship with Lizzie has gone to another level. Indeed, it seems like, more than any other woman we've seen over the years. When Lizzie was contacted by the Daily Mail via phone, the Daily Mail describes it as she spoke in a scattered manner and her responses were often disjointed. So that makes me, kind of worry for her. But one thing I noticed is she did not hang up. If she was a woman who was like, no comment, I don't want to talk to you, she would have hung up, or maybe she would have never answered. But Lizzie confirmed she was in a relationship with Chris Watts. She admitted that it could be perceived as weird, quote unquote. Now, on how they met, the Daily Mail says Lizzie said, "How things began is between me, him, and God." So that's what she said. Now, when they asked Lizzie about Chris's crimes, she said, "How do I feel about it? He knows how I feel." So I don't know if that's what they mean disjointed by she didn't really want to. Is she saving her story to tell on her own? That's what I keep wondering when we get to the end here. And she continued, "I don't know all the people involved, but I would want to respect them." So she's saying all the people involved in the crime? Like, what is she saying? She doesn't know all the people involved in Chris's life? I don't know. Sometimes it's hard if you don't hear the whole raw conversation. But Lizzie then described the killings, quote, as something harsh for anyone to experience. The Daily Mail said she was seeming to downplay how extraordinarily brutal the killings were. It's saying the Daily Mail has uncovered Lizzie and Chris's relationship. It's only the latest secret romance uncovered by a Daily Mail investigation. Now this other woman, I never believed her, Amanda McMahon. She claimed to have an affair back in 2017 with Watts and supposedly in 2018. And they're saying she shared new chilling details about the killer dad's disturbing behavior. I never believed Amanda McMahon, nor that Trent Bolt, or Bolte, however you say his name. Those two people who popped up randomly, as it were. Even CBI agent Tammy Lee, she didn't believe they were legit, I believe. If you're from Watts Island back in the day, you'll know what I mean. Nicole Kessinger, of course, gave her interviews. Then all of a sudden popped up this guy, Trent Bolt or whatever. I believe people have connected him to Nicole Kessinger. Just do your own research. These are all speculations. But even Tammy Lee said he was a waste of time. I believe Amanda was troubled I believe both of them, and as far as Trent and Amanda, I don't know their motivations for coming forward to claim they had affairs with Chris. I believe they were trying to distract away from Nicole Kessinger. Nicole Kessinger's affair with Chris was corroborated via phone records, photos. They literally, as much as she tried to hide it, they found the secret calculator photos of them together taking trips. You know, phone records, phone numbers, them calling each other. So much corroborated the fact that they were having an affair. When you looked at any evidence that Trent or Amanda tried to connect to Watts, it just wasn't there. It wasn't like, oh, I have photos of him, you know, with Trent. It was just kind of like, oh, there's some man's back, you know, in my bed or whatever. So that's why I never believed them. But anyway, they go into, unfortunately, Watts's crime on August 13th against his entire family. The brutality of it, we know it all. We don't have to dive deep into how horrific it was. It is saying Lizzie has not been driven away by Chris's horrific crimes. She visited him 20 times last year, so they must have seen, of course, more than we've seen. Prison logs obtained by the Daily Mail show she visited him 20 times last year. That's a whole lot of times. I mean, look at the times I went over. The only visits I had were, 2 in January, that one before Valentine's Day, and then 3 in March. Yeah, 3 in March. So I only have 6 visits. There's 14 more visits in 2025. I was like, whoa. So she was really driving to see this man and spending money on him. And I'm like, where are these logs? I didn't see them on the Daily Mail's website. I wish they literally published the logs. It does say she also spent Christmas Day with him in 2024. We saw that. And it says during one visit last summer, she was seen making out with Watts, according to Lisa Johnson. So that's who we watched. She was visiting her loved one, and Lisa is also interviewed on that YouTube channel I mentioned. I just linked to her live, Deadline Crime, so watch all her videos too, because she'll give you even more information, nuances, and they speak about how allegedly the Watts family, they're not on board with Chris marrying Lizzie, allegedly because, they find it disrespectful, to Shanann, and I'm sure, Shanann can't go on to marry anyone. Bella and Cece, Nico, they can't go on to marry anyone. And so, whoa, you think about it, makes you want to cry. I just watched a video. Someone was talking about Nicole Atkinson's recent interview, and she's literally talking about her little daughter, Madison. She's the girl who showed up in 2018 in those body cam videos. She was running around in Bella and Cece's room or whatever in their playroom, and people kept seeing the little girl running around. They were like, who's that? Oh my goodness, I see a ghost. And no, it was Nicole Atkinson's daughter. But Nicole is online talking about her daughter, something like being in middle school now. And I'm like, what? I was like, whoa. It shows you the time that passes and how Bella and Cece should be here experiencing all those things. It was really great. Nicole even mentioned, I think someone must have mentioned in her chat, maybe she was live somewhere, I don't know, it was like a screen recording. Someone must have mentioned Shanann, and Nicole said, I'm not talking about that. I'll talk about that when I'm ready, which really shows you her integrity, because she's saying, the media, I'm not doing some media thing. They've made millions off of Shanann's name. I'll talk about that when I'm ready. I really applauded her for that, because all these years, Nicole could have been sitting down and speaking about her friend and telling us stuff about Shanann that we never knew and all these details, but she's never done that. But Lisa, however, this woman who saw, Lizzie and Watts kissing and everything at the prison, she already knew about Chris Watts because she had watched that Netflix doc, American Murder, The Family Next Door. So she recognized him immediately. She said, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked to see him. Lisa, she's 39. That's what she told the Daily Mail. She said, Watts was clutching a Bible. I should get my Bible. So apparently Watts was clutching a Bible, and he was sitting there. Chris was sitting there with Lizzie, and they were talking just feet away. And so it says, inmates are prohibited from any physical contact until the visit ends, when they are given 10 seconds to embrace. I always wonder how it looks. In jail, I just see people can come in and they can talk on a screen, like they're not even in the same room as the person with their visits. And some on TV shows, they always show the person with that old phone and through the glass, but I don't think it's, or sometimes they show them sitting around tables, but they're not supposed to touch. And again, again, conjugal visits are not allowed, but Lisa said that Lizzie was googly-eyed and absolutely smitten with Watts, and she was really excited to take a picture with him, and as the visit ended, Watts began kissing her. So I wonder when, she's been visiting him, since 2023? When did they first start kissing? But Lisa said they hugged their whole 10 seconds while they were kissing. As they parted, Lisa heard Chris say, "I'll see you next time." Lizzie said, "I can't wait to see you again. I love you." And then Chris Watts told her, "I love you too." Whew. So some in Lizzie's family, the Daily Mail says, they were aware that Lizzie was dating some incarcerated killer, but they didn't know who the guy was. So her brother, Johnny Henderson, he's 43. He told the Daily Mail, "She told me he was serving time for committing a murder, but she made it seem like the person he killed stole something or did something wrong to him." So that's the one, Johnny Henderson. He's actually incarcerated in Ohio for SA. I was like, whoa. So the Daily Mail informed Johnny about who his sister was actually dating, Chris Watts, and he was like, "Oh, oh, ish, I'll say," after a brief pause. So Johnny was shocked. He didn't even know. He said, "I am shocked. That is kind of bad. It is kind of messed up. It is more shocking." So others in the family said they already knew. George Wilson Jr., he is Lizzie's former stepfather. He said he knew of their relationship between Lizzie and Watts and revealed they had openly discussed marriage. So George is no longer married to Lizzie's mother, but he claimed a marriage request had been submitted to prison officials. So apparently incarcerated individuals in Wisconsin, they can submit some kind of request to marry, but they have to meet some kind of strict criteria. I don't know what the criteria is. Then they have to get a formal approval from the warden. So I'm wondering, will the warden approve? I don't know. So while they wait for all this approval or whatever, I don't know if the warden will turn them down just because they won't want public backlash allowing Chris to marry. I don't know. But then the warden might run up against certain legalities and freedoms that incarcerated individuals still have. So they're saying Lizzie's already taken the steps to, make Watts her husband. Sealed court records show that Lizzie applied for a name change again on September 12th, 2025. And according to her brother, Lizzie is wearing Watts' name proudly. So when they communicate, because they're communicating through Getting Out, Lizzie and her brother, because he's incarcerated in Ohio. Because he's incarcerated in Ohio, he sees her contact name come across as Lizzie Watts. I mean, my goodness, she's not even married to him yet. But I don't know if that name change went through. How long would it take to go through? So why is she applying for a name change last September? That's like a year ago almost. I don't know how long that takes to go through. And can you apply for it before you have your marriage license? I mean, I got married first. If memory serves, I got married first. Had my marriage license and all that. And when we came back from Maui, that's where we got married. Then I went through the name change process. So that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know what's going on there. Funny aside, when I was applying for the marriage license or changing my name and, providing the stuff, and they had to ask, the woman asked me, "Where'd you get married?" And I said, "In Maui." And she was like, "Is that in the United States?" She didn't know Maui was in Hawaii, part of the United States. I just thought that was wild. Anyway, this is where they say Lizzie has an active real estate license. Yeah, I found her realty info in Wisconsin, but she's currently working at a local supermarket. So maybe that's why one of these photos, we can look at them intensely for a second before we figure out why she's doing this. Maybe that's why her photos, you can see her getting all this water and stuff, probably with her mom in a grocery store parking lot. So it says she is believed to be the primary caregiver for her mother, whom she moved, from Ohio to Wisconsin with her. So this new life built around the man she plans to marry behind prison walls. And she won't be the first woman who's married some high-profile killer. Let's take a quick look at these photos because I want to see what we can see. I see one, she's smiling. She is a really pretty woman. She has on this kind of track suit and it has her realty company name. She's holding a purse, a bag. I don't know if she's leaving work or going to work, but it just talks about the logo, the red lettering. She's just smiling. She obviously maybe doesn't know she's being photographed here. She has silver-toned earrings, dangling drop leaf style earrings. She has a ring. It says a subtle metallic band visible on her left hand, but that's from a bad location, so I'm not sure. And they're saying it looks like it could be in front of a Target or something like that. But let's look at some other photos. But I did notice her big smile there. This, she's looking head on at the photographer here. It's kind of like she's leaning down looking in the sun, but she is staring. It looks like she has noticed. I mean, I don't know how big their camera lenses are, but she's probably noticed this photographer. I don't know. At this point, she doesn't cover her face, or I don't know how she reacted. I wonder if there's video of this, but it looks like she has noticed, look, someone's photographing me. But she does. She looks really pretty with her earrings, like her wavy hair. And there's a bystander in the back who's not paying attention to anything. I just wanted to get all the details that we could get. Now she's looking off to the left. This might be after she realizes she's being photographed. So she has on a light colored undershirt under there, white scoop neck. Again, just athletic tracksuit, you know, yeah, running sneakers, just very comfortable for, I don't know what she does for a grocery store, but you know, the kind you probably need to be comfortable. And she has a bag, her extra jacket, she has a phone, she has her navy blue jacket, her multi-pattern bag, salmon pink, geometric print. So again, outdoors, and that car behind her probably isn't her, you know, Lexus. And we've got a few more. They got a close-up, or they got a close-up of the ring. The left hand positioned there. You see her short to medium length, you know, nicely oval-shaped nails, nice, clean, natural polish or whatever. She has a silver or a platinum style band. It's a stacked double band, or is it pave style design? Stones and detail. Contains prominent facets catching the light, producing sharp prismatic reflections with flashes of purple, magenta, and orange blue iridescence. It is pretty. And then I was wondering about this tattoo. She has like a I do want to get a tattoo right there too. Like, I'm married to Jesus, right around there. But it says directly above the ring band. So small, solid, black, dark ink silhouette of a tattoo. We can't really tell what it is. It might be a heart, small symbol, you know, I don't know. Is that like a black heart? You know, that reminds me of Brian Koberger doodling that heart, or, well, I think, did someone give him that heart? Whatever he was doodling, I think he doodled it for his sister while he was sitting in court. So that's all we can see from that ring vantage point. And then we see another, yeah, her hair looks like it's pulled back into a bun, short, curly. Well, the woman on the left, that must be her mom. Short, curly hair, elderly woman. So indeed, her mom's probably around 70 years old right now. Kudos to this Nathaniel Jones from the Daily Mail for catching all this. Both women dress comfortably. They're leaning over the shopping cart like any of us would do any day and unloading groceries. Look like they have some produce there, and you know, we'll see water and stuff. And maybe she's wearing jeans, actually, I can see from that photo. But she definitely has that big wedding ring on. Hand baskets, what else? Anything interesting? I don't know where they're loading it into, what kind of car, because that's not their car. It's like, it's some hatchback. I don't know. You can't tell their car technically. And of course, they've blurred the plates and everything. So see what you see if you notice anything else. And then finally, they have a photo of Lizzie lifting, you know, a package of water. It's kind of large, of course, and heavy. And that's it. She's kind of just making the face, you know, you might make when you're lifting something kind of heavy. 24, 32 pack of water, shopping cart. Maybe this is the place where she works. Maybe she was visiting Target. I don't know. And that's it. I'm not sure if she knew she was being photographed. I'm not sure if these were even taken on the same day. Who knows how long it took the Daily Mail to get all that done. Now that we've gone over that, let's talk about why. You know, I will offer you a unique perspective beyond all the, you know, pearl clutching and holier than thou, looking down upon this woman type of viewpoints, of course, we'll hear. You know, rightly so, I understand people's viewpoint, like, who would want to marry him? Disgusting. But I did hear someone say recently so declaratively, they just said, yeah, inmates have no rights. I think that person was trying to make their point of why Chris should not be allowed to get married. But I was like, that's not true. It's a good thing that these random people online aren't judges. But it does scare me that some of these people might end up on the jury with their ignorance of the law. Sometimes people might have a strong feeling, of course, like if I hated Chris Watts' guts and I hate what he did to his family and the disgusting things he did, I could have all these hateful feelings, but that doesn't make it my feelings the law. If I felt like, he should have no rights, that doesn't mean he has no rights. So let me tell you real quick about this woman. One time I answered jury duty downtown at the courthouse. I stood next to this older woman. We were waiting to go through the process. I was like, oh, maybe we'll get to, go through the voir dire process. They didn't pick me. I'm like, dang it. But, always do your jury duty. Let me tell you why. Especially if you're a sensible person who can literally listen to evidence and not be too judgmental, judge too quickly, don't judge too harshly. Yes, the Bible says, judge not lest ye be judged. And it also says, don't judge each other harshly. I'm not saying in no way what Chris Watts did was right. But let me tell you, when I was there this day in the courthouse, a line of men, dressed in their orange gear garb, and they were all shackled and walking funny the way, shuffling through the line. And they walked by us and, they kind of have you stand back a little bit. I was like, these are likely men on their way to their next court hearing or whatever, shuffled in and, go through the court. And they likely had not been convicted of anything yet. We were in the courthouse. We weren't in some prison somewhere. And the woman is just like clucking. She's like, how could someone be so desperate? I think she was talking to a different older woman too, also next to us. And they're shaking their head in disgust. It's been years. And I think they might have mentioned something about, put him under the jail. You always hear people say that. And I thought to myself, I was like, she doesn't even know their cases. She doesn't know their stories yet. And she's already put them under the jail. But for the grace of God, any one of us could have been in jail. Now, I know some people claim to be perfect, but I am not perfect. I will tell you, I've done some things wrong in my life, and by the grace of God, I've never been arrested. I don't have a record. Thank the Lord. But I was like, how can this woman go sit on a jury if she's already looked at these dudes just because they're wearing orange and shackled? She's already decided they're all guilty, So that's why when someone says, oh, inmates should have no rights, I don't believe that. It says incarcerated individuals lose many of their personal freedoms. They do. Sometimes, can't vote, can't do all this stuff, but they don't forfeit everything, all legal constitutional protections. Courts do recognize that, their confinement restricts their daily life and helps protect others, Lord willing. Prisoners do retain some fundamental rights. Facility security order and some prison inmates in the United States retain a constitutional right to marry, as established by the U.S. Supreme Court in this landmark case, Turner versus Safley, from 1987. However, this right is subject to strict facility regulations, security approvals, and state marriage laws. So it depends. As much as it might disgust us or piss any one of us off thinking about Chris's crimes and then going on to, marry and he can't technically have children with her because they're not supposed to have conjugal visits. But remember, Ted Bundy, he was able to sneak in that conjugal visits, but he had a lot more freedom because that was crazy days. But with Lizzie Henderson, as I looked at her LinkedIn and studied her bankruptcy and all this info, I couldn't help but ask, is she desperate? Is she running the long con? She wrote in her Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing, my mother is living with me temporarily until she can move out to her own place. But it seems like maybe she didn't move out. And then from the period of January 1st, 2023 until March 21st, 2023, when she filed for bankruptcy, she had only earned $8,243. So that's nearly a 3-month period. That seems like a low earnings. However, her median family income in her household of 2 is listed as $70,490. So I'm assuming her mother gets income too, and maybe that was combined or something. I don't know. My point is, there's a single woman. She's filed for bankruptcy. She's taking care of her elderly mother. She's had money issues. Is she desperate? She has a ton of student loan debt according to that bankruptcy filing, $98,000. She had her car. The garnishment was due to money she owed on the car. It looks like they didn't repossess it back then. They just garnished her wages until the debt was paid off. But she listed herself as an entrepreneur, business owner in Cleveland. She had her history of work experience and her work ethic Unfortunately, there are misspellings in there. Of course, we all misspell things, but it makes me wonder, like, She said, my experience ranges over different fields of business, from management, hospitality, to superior customer service, as well as internet retail, to even my share of office assisting. So it looks like she has a wide range of experience, but it feels like it's not honed in on anything. Like, how they say, a jack of all trades, master of none. She wrote, I'm a hard worker and a diligent individual in whatever field of work I do. I've had plenty of professional experiences where I always met or aspired to meet standards preset for me. As an individual, I am imperfect. Yeah, we all are, but I hold professionalism and my work ethic near and dear, as I also aspire to be the best professional that I can be in the business of infinite possibilities, the international market. She sounds like what do you call those people that dream? I forget what they call it. It's just like a big dreamer, There's like her head in the clouds or something. There's more to me than what I can put into words, but actions speak louder than words. Let me show you what my actions can say. On my current standing position as president of International Lee Corporation, Lee, that word, Christopher Lee Watts, reminds me, ugh. Anyway, currently she's like my business base and work field is in construction. So I did see that in, I believe, the bankruptcy paperwork, and the remodeling of existing residential structures. Based on years of independent contracting, I now own and run my own small business in its starting stages of growth. With LinkedIn, Twitter, and with other social business networking sites, I don't know when she wrote this, to promote, expose, and directly link my business to possible consumers of the services my company provides, as well with detailed information for possible investors in this corporation to become internationally known. I think she's getting her wish here, and compete on a local, national, and international basis. I thank you for your interest. I look forward to speaking with you. My goals are simply this: to become financially, and she misspells financially, but her goals are to become financially secure through good old-fashioned hard work and dedication. Like most of us, she wants to be financially secure. But that did kind of stick out to me, like, will Watts be a means to an end? And I don't mean through him. I'm sure he's not. People are putting money on his books. He's not able to give anything, I'm sure. Expand my own business internationally one day and do something good for the world. She wrote, my purpose is very broad and my goal is simple. I'm open to new opportunities, that is, if they fit my range of experience or if my professional consultation in my diverse background is needed, contact me. If I have not seen you first, little smiley face. So part of me thinks a lot of things, respectfully. Lizzie might need mental help. Who knows? The Daily Mail's talking about her disjointed type of answers. She might just need money. Or maybe she truly feels this is God's plan for her. And I'm like, thank you, Lord, this was not God's plan for me. I did write to an inmate once, this woman, Cindy, and I keep forgetting her last name, but in Akron, and she was accused of having a hit put on her husband. It was all this stuff. George, that's her name, Cindy George. So many years ago, I just felt this urge after seeing her story back then in the newspaper. It's probably before we were really online. And I literally wrote her a letter while she was in jail or prison or whatever, and she literally wrote me back. And I was like, oh my goodness. And she ended up getting out and everything. But that's the only time I've ever felt compelled. I was praying, Holy Spirit, let this letter haunt her. That's the only time I felt compelled to really write to an inmate. And of course, now I go in, it's only on the women's side. With one church I went in and we went on the men's side, and it was just not comfortable. Let me tell you that. This was just jail, and it was not comfortable. It was not organized enough. And anyway, now I go and I speak with women, and to me it makes a difference. With Lizzie, how could she make money? Is this the long con with her? Now, marrying a high-profile person like Watts, it wouldn't give her any direct money. It's not like she's getting money off her books. In fact, it would cost Lizzie, I think, money after all these years. Moving up to Wisconsin might be, of course, a cheaper cost of living than living in some parts of Cleveland, perhaps. But Will it make her money one day? Watts is serving all these life sentences. He himself with Shanann, they filed for bankruptcy. We went over that. But they're saying in this true crime economy, people like Lizzie who attach herself to a notorious figure like Watts, she might monetize it off of the notoriety rather than relying on anything Watts has, Okay, this is how she could generate income. Media, of course, and book deals. So the Son of Sam law, would it extend to Lizzie? That's what I was trying to figure out. So the spouses of these high-profile inmates, they become subjects of public fascination because people are like, yeah, why would a woman want to marry Chris Watts? Like even if I was like, oh my goodness, was she that lonely? Or, do you get to the point you're so lonely where you're like, oh, let me write Chris Watts and go fall in love with him? Granted, okay, if he has, again, confessed to God everything he did, and if he's truly contrite, and if he truly understands what he did wrong, God's word says he can be forgiven. So it's not up to me to condemn him. I don't have the power to condemn him. But Lizzie, will she show up in a Netflix doc one day? Will she create her own documentary? Will she publish a book? Will she sell exclusive rights? Oh, the photo. I just thought about that. You saw how Lisa said Lizzie was happy to take a photo with him. Imagine how much that would go for. And how did they take a photo? Because I know they don't let you bring phones in. Do they let you have any kind of approved, kind of like a Polaroid or something? Because, you can't go bring in your phone up in there. I've got to figure this out. But imagine if Lizzie's going there all these times, all these visits, 20 visits last year. What if she took 20 photos last year alone? How much would, some network pay for exclusive photos to Watts? Because you see that last photo we got through a public records request. It was from 2023, October, almost 3 years ago. And you'll see YouTubers get on here talking about Watts gained a ton of weight and he's this and that. And they're making all these AI photos and it's not really him. But Lizzie would have the actual real deal, the photos. A lot of times, you know how networks often say, we don't pay for interviews. They stand on that. We don't pay for interviews. What they pay for is the rights to the photos that could run along with the interviews. So maybe, I don't know, if they're saying, okay, she could negotiate a contract for audio recordings. Yeah, every time she speaks with them on the phone, not in person, I don't think she could sneak a recording device in there. Maybe she could. But if she's talking to him on the phone and she records on her end, that could be something. If Chris ever confessed stuff to her about Nicole Kassinger, about, whatever that he's never told anyone else, yeah. There's a lot of ways she could monetize this whole thing. Who knows if she could create her own content online, even though the Son of Sam laws prevent Chris Watts from, of course, making money from his crimes, even though, like Courtney Clinny, I made a video yesterday, her lawyer is fighting that. Oh, I want, Courtney to be able to, make money, I guess, from her crime of killing her boyfriend. So I know the criminals can't cash in, but what about the spouses of the convicted criminals? Can they cash in? I don't know. It does say the public backlash against something like Lizzie, who knows, if she marries him and then divorces him and then, does her own documentary, writes her own book, does whatever, backlash would be intense. But again, I say that might not be Lizzie's intentions at all. She might be truly in love with him or thinks she's in love with him. Perhaps she believes he's changed. Maybe he truly is a Christian now. Maybe he's the one for her. Does she plan to divorce him, write a tell-all, start a YouTube channel? Who knows? Tell me your thoughts. People speak of unforgivable crimes. According to the Bible, the only unforgivable sin is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, which I still don't quite totally understand. But even though Jesus warns that specific sin won't be forgiven, of course, there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. And by saying that, I don't mean like Watts or any other person is just like, blah, 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 yeah, forgive me, I'm with God now. Not just talking about it, I mean literally being about it. Like if he's really, 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 truly contrite, I don't know. Of course, some people might believe he never deserves anything. He doesn't deserve a wife. He doesn't deserve to go on with his life. I don't know. I've done things. It's hard. It's a different perspective. That's why I said I'm offering you something different than anyone I feel like can get on here and rant and rave. And I understand, like, how dare he take Shanann's life? How dare he take those girls' lives? Nico's life in utero, how dare he do that? But then I also think too, I can't put myself way up here on some high horse just because I've never been arrested or, I've never done this or that or whatever. But sometimes I think, like, what if God looks at Chris's crimes the same way I've done things in my life I've had to repent for? Pregnancies I've terminated, when I was younger. I think to myself, what if God looks at that the same way, with the same type of horror? I know we don't think that way because certain things, if our laws say this is legal during this time, then we don't necessarily think about the morality of it. So I've repented. In Jesus, God has forgiven me. But I was like, what if Watts has truly repented? Then who am I to say the Lord hasn't condemned him? I know people who have, some people are like, what? I have never opened a Bible. Like, what are you talking about? These are the thoughts. These are the words. Just living, we're a living epistle. We shall know as we are known. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say. That's where I offer a unique perspective, because you're not going to hear the same things. You're not going to hear, oh, Watts, burn in hell. Oh, who's this stupid woman seeing you? Blah, blah, blah. I want to go deeper. I like to come, let us reason together. Let's think deeper. But again, it's food for thought. We shall know as we are known. Let me know your thoughts. Hosea 11:10, they will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, his children will come trembling from the west. I like that part because it's like whatever we've done wrong, if we're still coming back to the Lord, we're going in the right direction. Even if we're trembling, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. If we're going towards the Lord, we're going in the right direction. Thank you for watching all this. Stay tuned. Whenever I get more Chris Watts evidence, I will put it up. But, check out the links below if you want to see all the actual documents into my research. Now that Lizzie is out and about, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about her. If she's truly wanting to marry Chris Watts, she's not one who wants to hide in the shadows. Nobody who would want a quiet life away from the media would marry someone like Chris Watts. My question is she marrying him in spite of his infamous position, or is she marrying him for other nefarious reasons? Is she truly a Christian? Are they, reading the Word together, reading the Bible together, vibing, knowing God has brought them together? Or is there something else going on here? Time and the Lord will tell. Thank you for watching all this. Stay tuned. I feel like a billion more cases I need to cover. But take care.